Dear students, today we are going to talk about adrenergic drugs. So this is the second lecture in adrenergic pharmacology. In the previous lecture, we have talked about the very basics of the adrenergic pharmacology, like what are catecholamines, what are the receptors of the adrenergic system, etc. If you have not looked at that lecture, please go back and look at that lecture. So, what are we gonna learn today? Our class contents. First of all, classification of adrenergic drugs. How do we classify the adrenergic drugs? Then pharmacological actions of epinephrine and norepinephrine. Then catecholamines and non-catecholamines. What are non-catecholamines? Okay. What are the differences with catecholamines? Then the therapeutic use of some important adrenergic drugs, because adrenergic drugs are not used usually nowadays. These drugs are less popular and some drugs are obsolete. So, we will look at some important drugs which are used therapeutically, okay? And then specific indications of epinephrine. Where do we use epinephrine nowadays? Okay. Now, let us see what are sympathomimetics. Adrenergic drugs are sometimes called sympathomimetics. Why? Let us see that these are the drugs with actions similar to that of epinephrine or of sympathetic stimulation. Okay, so sympathomimetic drugs actually mimic the action of the sympathetic system. Okay, so you know that the adrenergic system is also called the sympathetic system. For that reason, sympathomimetic drugs are the drugs which mimic the action of sympathetic nervous system stimulation. Okay. Now, come to the classification of adrenergic drugs. Okay. So, let us look at this picture. In order to learn the classification, we need to look at this picture so that it will be very easy for you. So, adrenergic drugs are classified into three types according to their mechanism of action. Okay. These are direct acting sympathomimetics, indirect acting sympathomimetics, and mixed acting sympathomimetics. So, direct acting, indirect acting, and mixed acting. So, what are direct acting, what are indirect, what are mixed, right? So, direct sympathomimetics are those who act on the receptors. They directly act on the receptors. You can see the receptors here. So, these are direct sympathomimetic drugs which act directly on the alpha adrenergic receptors and beta adrenergic receptors. These are directly acting sympathomimetic drugs. What are indirectly acting sympathomimetic drugs? You can see this is the presynaptic nerve ending. Okay. From here, norepinephrine is released into the synaptic cleft, and norepinephrine goes and acts on the receptors. Okay. So, indirect acting sympathomimetic drugs are those who actually increase the release of norepinephrine here in the synaptic cleft. They do not act directly on the receptors, okay, alpha receptors or beta receptors. They do not act on them directly on the receptors. They act on the they act on the presynaptic nerve endings, and they improve or increase the release of norepinephrine into the synaptic cleft, and then this norepinephrine is gonna act on those receptors. So, these are called indirect acting sympathomimetic drugs, and there are some drugs which act by both these mechanisms. Okay. So, you can see direct sympathomimetics, indirect sympathomimetics, and mixed. You have to look at the examples. Direct sympathomimetics like epinephrine, isoproterenol, phenylephrine, etc., and indirect sympathomimetics like amphetamine, tyramine. These are indirect sympathomimetics, and there are mixed sympathomimetics. They act directly as well as indirectly. For example, ephedrine, dopamine, mephentermine, etc. Okay. Now, let us come to the pharmacological actions of epinephrine or pharmacological action of sympathetic system. Okay. So, the adrenergic system have actions on different organ systems of the body, and this system acts when the body is under stress. Okay. So, under stress we actually our body activates the sympathetic nervous system and some changes occur. So, the sympathomimetic drugs, so these drugs will actually mimic the action, that means they will produce the actions which are actually produced during stress. So, if you think logically, then you do not have to memorize all of the actions of epinephrine. You just think logically that what the body does in case of stress, under stress. Okay. Then you can logically answer these questions. So, let us look at these questions, these actions. Okay. So, the action on heart, of course, in case of stress you need more oxygenation. So, you need to increase your cardiac output, you need to increase your heart rate. Okay. So, all functions here, the cardiac functions are beta 1 mediated, because beta 1 receptors are present on the heart muscle. Then epinephrine, what causes? Epinephrine increases the rate and force of contractions. Okay. So, epinephrine increases the heart rate and force of contraction. It acts on SA node, AV node, bundle of His, atrial and ventricular fibers. Okay. And let us look at the actions on blood vessels. Now, actions of blood vessels is not that simple, because alpha 1 does something and beta 1 does something else, okay, something opposite. So, alpha 1 causes vasoconstriction, and where does alpha 1 causes this vasoconstriction? Predominantly in cutaneous, mucous membrane and renal beds or renal blood vessels. So, alpha 1 receptors are mainly present in the skin blood vessels, mucous membrane blood vessels and renal blood vessels, okay, and that causes vasoconstriction. Now, we have beta 2 receptors, and beta 2 receptors are also present in vascular beds. For example, they are predominantly present in skeletal muscle, liver and coronary arteries. Okay. So, beta 2 they cause vasodilation, beta 2 cause vasodilation. Where do they cause these things? In skeletal muscle, liver and coronary arteries mainly. Okay. Now, what are their actions on blood pressure? Okay. So, this is very important, because there are so many drugs that act by modulating the actions of adrenergic system. So, their action on blood pressure is very important, and you have to understand the basic mechanism of these things. Okay. So, norepinephrine and epinephrine have different actions on the blood vessels or blood pressure. Okay. So, let us look at the actions of norepinephrine. So, norepinephrine has alpha 1, beta 1 actions. They have alpha 1 action, beta 1 action, but it has no beta 2 action. It does not have any beta 2 action. So, what does it cause? Alpha 1 causes vasoconstriction, that leads to increase in diastolic blood pressure, and the beta 1, which is present on cardiac muscles, that cause tachycardia, that increases cardiac output and ultimately increases the systolic blood pressure. So, it increases both the systolic blood pressure and the diastolic blood pressure. So, ultimately there is an increase in blood pressure. Okay. Now, come to epinephrine. Epinephrine has alpha 1 receptors, beta 1 receptors as well as beta 2 receptors. Okay. But there is a thing, affinity is greater for beta 2 receptors than alpha 1 receptors. Epinephrine's affinity is greater for the beta 2 receptors than the alpha receptors. Okay. So, at low dose, if you give epinephrine in low dose, then what does it cause? Its beta 2 action becomes prominent. Okay. In low dose, beta 2 action becomes prominent. So, beta 2 mediated vasodilation is there. that leads to decreased total peripheral resistance, decrease in diastolic blood pressure. Okay, so through beta 2 mediated action, epinephrine leads to decrease in diastolic blood pressure, and through its beta 1 mediated action on the heart, it leads to tachycardia, it leads to increased cardiac output and increase in systolic blood pressure. So there is increased pulse pressure. Okay, so what does it cause? At low dose epinephrine causes vasodilation in the periphery that leads to decrease in diastolic blood pressure, and through its action on the heart, it causes increased heart rate and cardiac output, which leads to increase in systolic blood pressure. Okay, and ultimately an increase in pulse pressure. But if you give epinephrine injection IV intravenously, you are giving epinephrine injection, what does it cause? Its alpha 1 action becomes prominent, then its alpha 1 action becomes prominent, so that causes vasoconstriction, okay, and raised diastolic blood pressure, and through its beta 1 action on the heart, it causes increase in systolic blood pressure. Okay, so through alpha 1 action, vasoconstriction, rise in diastolic blood pressure, and then through its beta 1 action, rise in systolic blood pressure. Okay, so if you are giving this drug to a hypotensive patient, then the blood pressure returns to normal within a few minutes. But there is a but, the blood pressure falls after that. Okay, so the blood pressure decreases after that. Why it occurs? Because there is rapid uptake of epinephrine. So after the action is terminated, the epinephrine is uptaken. Okay, so what happens then? Then epinephrine concentration around the receptor decreases, because most of the epinephrine are reuptaken. Okay, for that reason epinephrine concentration at the receptor becomes low. This low concentration continues to act on beta 2 receptors. Through beta 2 receptors, it causes vasodilation and decrease in the diastolic blood pressure. So there is a decrease in the diastolic blood pressure, so the blood pressure actually decreases, the blood pressure actually falls. Okay, now come to respiratory system, their actions on the respiratory system. It causes bronchodilation and decongestion. Bronchodilation through beta 2 receptor and decongestion through alpha 1 receptor, which we will discuss in the chapter of respiratory pharmacology. Okay, their actions on the eye, this is very important. Alpha 1 receptor mediated mydriasis occurs. Okay, so contraction of radial muscle of iris, and that causes mydriasis. This is an alpha 1 action, and through alpha 2 action, which increases aqueous outflow and that reduces intraocular pressure, which can be used in case of glaucoma. Okay, so and beta antagonists, through beta mediated action, if you give beta blockers, then it can decrease the aqueous humor production and decrease in intraocular pressure. So all these things we will talk about in glaucoma in details. Okay, then you will understand the mechanism of their actions and the detailed anatomy and physiology of these drugs, how they are acting on the eye. We will talk about these things later in the glaucoma part. Okay, anti-glaucoma drugs part. So just for now, just remember these things. They have actions on GIT, which is they reduce peristalsis and constrict the sphincter. That means there is decrease in bowel movement and there is constipation may be produced. Okay, but this thing is not clinically important. We actually do not use drugs targeting on this action, so this is less important. Then come to bladder action. there is relaxation of the detrusor muscles of the bladder through beta 2 mediated action, and there is constriction of sphincter through alpha 1 mediated action, which leads to ultimately urinary retention. So these drugs, that means the sympathomimetic drugs, or epinephrine, that causes urinary retention. Now their actions on uterus, this is very important. Okay, so there are two types of uterus. One is pregnant uterus, another is non-pregnant uterus. In case of non-pregnant uterus, in non-pregnant uterus there are more alpha 1 receptors than beta 2 receptors. So in non-pregnant uterus there is alpha 1 receptors, and through alpha 1 receptors there is contraction of non-pregnant uterus, and this is clinically unimportant. It has no importance clinically, but the importance is on pregnant uterus. Okay, so pregnant uterus, as a woman becomes pregnant and her uterus becomes changed, then alpha 1 receptors, these alpha 1 receptors are replaced by beta 2 receptors. Okay, so what is the function of beta 2 receptors on that pregnant uterus? It causes relaxation of pregnant uterus. It causes relaxation. So it has clinical implications. This is beneficial in premature uterine contractions. When suppose a woman is really angry with someone and she is getting hysteric, and there is premature contraction of the uterus. So if you give a beta 2 agonist drug, okay, then that will relax the uterus, and that will prevent the fetus from expulsion. Okay. Now their effect on skeletal muscle. What is the effect, or what are the effects of epinephrine on skeletal muscle? Look, beta 2 receptors, through beta 2 receptors which is present on the muscle spindle, the muscle tone is maintained by epinephrine or norepinephrine mainly. So muscle tone is maintained by beta 2 receptors. Okay, so if you increase epinephrine concentration on that beta 2 receptor site, okay, so that will increase the muscle tone. There will be increased muscle tone, so the muscle strength will be increased, right? But if you increase highly this muscle tone, then what will happen? There will be dysfunctional muscle spindle. The muscle spindle will become dysfunctional, and there will be tremor, and this has clinical implications. We give beta blockers to reduce hypertension. Okay, some people take beta blockers for lifelong. So what happens here, if you take beta blockers, then these beta 2 receptors will be blocked, which maintains actually the muscle tone. Okay, so beta 2 receptors maintain muscle tone, which will become less active. Okay, this muscle tone will not be maintained properly, right? So muscle tone is maintained by beta 2 receptors. If you give beta blockers, this tone will be reduced, this tone will be diminished. For that reason, people or patients taking long term beta blockers feel weakness, they feel muscle weakness, they feel fatigue, muscular fatigue. They cannot exercise properly, because if they exercise they feel tired, they feel pain, muscle pain. Okay, so that is the reason. This is an important clinical implication. Now come to the CNS effects. There is no marked CNS effect because of poor penetration, because if you give exogenous epinephrine, then it will not cross the blood brain barrier, and then there will be less action on the CNS. And if there is some action, that can be restlessness, apprehension, tremor, etc. Now let's come to their metabolic effect. If you say their metabolic effect, if you think it in a logical way, then you can think that during stress, when we are fighting, when we are running, then our blood glucose level should be high so that we can get quick energy. Okay, so the metabolic effect of the sympathetic system or epinephrine is to increase blood sugar level. So through beta 2 receptor, beta 3 receptor and alpha 2 receptor, through all these receptors epinephrine tends to increase the blood sugar level. So beta 2 mediated glycogenolysis, glucagon release and inhibition of glycogenesis, all these things leads to increase in blood sugar level. Okay, then through beta 3 mediated action, beta 3 this is present on adipose tissues, so it causes stimulation of lipolysis, increased free fatty acid level, and in this free fatty acid acts as a raw material of gluconeogenesis, and so there is increased gluconeogenesis and there is increased blood sugar. And through alpha 2 mediated action, that alpha 2 receptors are present on the pancreatic beta cells, and through alpha 2 receptors it inhibits the insulin release, so ultimately there is increase in blood sugar level. And the sympathetic system has some actions on the reproductive system. On the female reproductive system, we have talked this earlier, that uterine contractions in non-pregnant uterus and relaxation on pregnant uterus. And in male, epinephrine tends to cause ejaculation. Okay, so this causes ejaculation. And here is a quick note that male orgasm is a combination of both sympathetic and parasympathetic systems. So parasympathetic system causes erection and the sympathetic system causes ejaculation. Okay, so another point you can remember, that is ejaculation does not occur without erection. So ejaculation must be followed by erection. So if there is no erection, then adrenergic drive alone does not cause ejaculation. Okay. Now come to the therapeutic classification of the adrenergic drugs. As I have said earlier that these drugs are not very much used nowadays. These drugs are used less commonly. These are not common drugs, commonly used drugs. So the therapeutic classification contains cardiac stimulants. There are some drugs which cause cardiac stimulation like epinephrine, dobutamine. There are bronchodilator drugs, for example salmeterol, albuterol, and albuterol is called salbutamol in the United Kingdom, and albuterol is the name in the United States. Okay, so we will talk about these drugs in respiratory pharmacology. Then the nasal decongestants, xylometazoline, phenylephrine, these are nasal decongestants. Uterine relaxants, as I have talked earlier that in premature uterine contractions we use these uterine relaxant drugs, for example ritutrine. Then come to CNS stimulants. There are CNS stimulants, for example amphetamine, methamphetamine. Okay, these drugs are not used nowadays. These are the drugs of abuse. So people who are drug addicted, they mainly take these drugs, amphetamine or methamphetamine. Okay, then there are anorectics, for example sibutramine, dexfenfluramine. So these drugs are not used nowadays because there are some other very good drugs which are used to reduce weight or as anorectics. So these drugs are less commonly used. Then there are pressure agents, for example phenylephrine and ephedrine. Now come to another important topic, which is catecholamines and non-catecholamines. Okay, so what are catecholamines? The catecholamines are those drugs which have this catechol ring. Okay, this is the catechol ring which they possess, so they are called catecholamines. And what are the non-catecholamines? They do not have any catechol ring. Okay, so catechol ring actually is 3 and 4 dihydroxybenzene. So here is a hydroxyl group and here is another hydroxyl group, but this non-catecholamine does not have any hydroxylation. Okay, so this is just a benzene ring. This does not have any hydroxylation. For that reason this is called non-catecholamine. So according to structure, the adrenergic drugs are catecholamines and they are non-catecholamines. Okay. So you can see here the non-catecholamine structure. You can read from here. Now what are the differences between catecholamines and non-catecholamines? Okay. So the catecholamines act directly on the receptors, but the non-catecholamines does not act directly. They act indirectly to increase the norepinephrine release and thereby increases its action. And let's look at their solubility. The catecholamines are water soluble, so they cannot be given orally. We should give those drugs intravenously. And the non-catecholamine drugs are lipid soluble, so you can give these drugs orally. Okay. And then solubility, the CNS actions. So catecholamines cannot cross the blood brain barrier, so they do not have any CNS action, but the non-catecholamines can cross the blood brain barrier and they have CNS actions. What about their duration of action? You know, we have talked earlier about two important enzymes which destroy the catecholamines. These are monoamine oxidase and catechol O methyl transferase. So catecholamines are easily destroyed by these enzymes, so their duration of action is short. Okay, so their duration of action is short. On the other hand, the non-catecholamines are not easily destroyed by monoamine oxidase inhibitor and monoamine oxidase and catechol O methyl transferase, because they do not have that hydroxylations on their structure. So they have a long duration of action because they are metabolized slowly. For that reason, they have a longer duration of action. About their potency, if we talk about their potency, then we can say that the catecholamines are more potent and the non-catecholamines are less potent. Okay. Now let's talk about a few important drugs of the adrenergic system. First come to dopamine. This is a very important drug and it has receptors, okay, action on alpha 1 and beta 1. It has actions on alpha 1 and beta 1 receptors, as well as it has actions on dopaminergic receptors. It has actions on dopaminergic receptors. Dopaminergic receptors are actually from D1 to D5. Okay, but there are two types of receptors, D1 type and D2 type. Some of these D1 to D5 are some of our D1 type and some are D2 type. So for simplistic purpose, I have written here D1 and D2. Okay, so dopamine actually is present as a neurotransmitter in the basal ganglia of the brain, and it acts as a hormone in the adrenal medulla. It is also synthesized in the adrenal medulla and it is also synthesized in the brain. Okay, so what are their therapeutic implications? So dopamine's therapeutic implication is in cardiogenic shock. This is the first choice drug in cardiogenic shock. Okay, so it is given by slow IV infusion. Why it is given slow IV infusion? We will check it out. But why this drug is actually chosen in case of cardiogenic shock? You know, there are some other drugs like epinephrine, isoproterenol, which can have similar type of action, but this drug is preferred in cardiogenic shock. Why is that? Okay, because it increases heart rate by beta 1 action, heart rate and cardiac output, that increases cardiac output. So in cardiogenic shock, the main problem is cardiac output. There is diminished cardiac output, so we are increasing the cardiac output by dopamine, as well as what we are doing through dopaminergic receptors. Through dopaminergic receptors, it increases renal blood flow. It increases renal blood flow. For that reason, there is renal vasodilation. But if you give some other drugs, okay, if you give some other drugs like epinephrine, then what it will cause, it will increase the cardiac output, okay, but that will lead to generalized vasoconstriction, that will lead to alpha 1 mediated vasoconstriction. So, alpha 1 mediated vasoconstriction will lead to renal vasoconstriction, and if there is renal vasoconstriction, the renal blood supply will be decreased, and that can lead to acute renal shutdown, which is a grave complication, which is a grave condition. So, we do not want to destroy our kidney in order to manage the cardiogenic shock. Okay. So, it has double benefit, this dopamine. In cardiogenic shock, it increases cardiac output as well as it protects the kidney. So, this is the first choice drug. Now, here is a quick note, you can say that this dopamine is given very slowly in cardiogenic shock, like 8 drops per minute or 10 drops per minute, like this. And why is that? Why we give dopamine so slowly? Because if we give dopamine rapidly, what it will cause, its alpha 1 action will become prominent. Okay. So, that will lead to renal vasoconstriction, and that will lead to acute renal shutdown. So, we do not want that effect. So, we give this drug very slowly. Now, another indication of dopamine, we can use this drug in hypotension and severe heart failure. So, usually in low or normal peripheral resistance and in patients with oliguria. You can understand these things. If there is normal peripheral resistance or low peripheral resistance, then if you give dopamine, that will increase the cardiac output and the peripheral tissues will get enough oxygenation, okay, enough blood supply. But if there is high peripheral resistance, then the increased cardiac output will not cause enough blood supply in the peripheral tissues. Because of the peripheral resistance, the blood supply will be less for that reason. And in patients with oliguria, why in patients with oliguria? Because there will be increased renal blood supply, and that will lead to improvement of the kidney function. So, we use this drug in case of oliguria. Now, come to dobutamine. Dobutamine is another very important drug, and this is not a synthetic catecholamine. This is this is a synthetic drug. This is not not an endogenous catecholamine. So, this is synthetic beta 1 agonist. Okay. So, and unlike dopamine, it does not have any dopaminergic activities. So, it does not have dopaminergic activities. It cannot protect the kidneys. Okay. It does not have any renoprotective effect, and it increases cardiac output with very little vascular effects. What are their therapeutic use? If you see, we can use this drug in acute heart failure to increase the cardiac output, and then after cardiac surgery to provide inotropic support. We can use this drug in septic shock, and also we can use this drug in cardiogenic shock along with dopamine. When dopamine alone cannot provide enough strength to the heart, okay, it cannot produce enough cardiac output alone, then we can add dopamine along with we can add dobutamine along with dopamine. Okay. Now, amphetamine. So, as I have mentioned earlier, that amphetamine has become a drug of abuse. It is not used as a drug routinely. It is a very less commonly used drug and most commonly used as a substance of abuse. Maybe you have watched the drama that is called Breaking Bad, and in that drama there is a professor, chemistry professor, Mr. Walter White, who manufactures methamphetamine, which is a chemical analog of amphetamine, and that is a very popular substance of abuse in the western countries. So, what does it cause actually? It causes CNS stimulation, and CNS stimulation actually gives you euphoria, you become very happy, your mood is elevated, okay, feel excited. So these are the things which occur after taking these drugs. So this is an indirect acting adrenergic drug. Its mechanism of action, it stimulates the release of catecholamines from intracellular stores and thereby increases the sympathetic action. This is a drug of abuse. This is used as in the form of injection or inhalation, and it causes euphoria, alertness, decreased fatigue, you will feel less fatigued, and then depressed appetite and insomnia. It can cause insomnia. And its therapeutic use, there are a few therapeutic use like ADHD, that is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder in psychiatry. Then appetite suppression, narcolepsy. Narcolepsy is a type of sleep disorder where in daytime you feel extremely sleepy, you fall asleep, in your working place, maybe on the bus, on the train, or anywhere you feel extremely sleepy all the time. So this is narcolepsy, and you can use this drug here. But again, this is very less commonly used drug. And there are some adverse effects you can look at, like insomnia, irritability, weakness, dizziness, tremor, confusion, delirium, panic state. You can use benzodiazepines to manage these symptoms. It can cause palpitation, arrhythmias, hypotension, angina, pain. It can cause anorexia, nausea, and vomiting. Now, use of these drugs as nasal decongestants. How do they cause decongestion in the nasal mucosa? So they actually stimulate alpha 1 receptors in the blood vessels of nasal mucosa, which causes vasoconstriction. If there is vasoconstriction, there is shrinkage and decreased volume of the nasal mucosa, and there is relief of congestion. What are the adverse effects? They may produce stinging sensation inside the nose. If you use chronically, they will cause atrophic rhinitis. And that might cause anosmia. You will not get any smell. You will lose the ability to smell anything, that is anosmia. Now come to the drugs acting on alpha 2 receptors. So we have talked about the drugs which actually act on the alpha 1 or beta receptors, but these drugs actually work on the alpha 2 receptors, and the drugs which stimulate the alpha 2 receptors, they have the anti-sympathetic effect. They do the opposite effect produced by the sympathetic nervous system. Why is that? Because alpha 2 receptor is an autoreceptor, as I have discussed this in earlier lecture, that stimulation of alpha 2 receptor will lead to decrease in the sympathetic outflow. That means the release of norepinephrine will be reduced. Okay, so let's look at some drugs here. One is alpha methyl dopa. Alpha methyl dopa is a very commonly used drugs in obstetrics. Okay, so the pregnant women who have highly elevated blood pressure, we can use alpha methyl dopa in them, because other drugs, most of the antihypertensive drugs have been proven to be teratogenic. That means they cause some sort of problems in the fetus. For that reason, we cannot use most of the antihypertensive drugs. So we use this drug alpha methyl dopa. So let's see how this drug acts. Actually, alpha methyl dopa acts as a false neurotransmitter. It acts as a false neurotransmitter. Now, what I mean by this, let's look at this. So this is our presynaptic nerve ending. Okay, in the presynaptic nerve ending, you know that norepinephrine is synthesized from a raw material called tyrosine. Okay. Now, what happens if we give alpha methyl dopa? If we give alpha methyl dopa, then it enters into the nerve ending, and by the enzyme dopa decarboxylase, the same enzyme which converts dopa into dopamine. So by the same enzyme, it is converted into alpha methyl dopamine. Alpha methyl dopa is converted into alpha methyl dopamine. This enzyme dopa decarboxylase cannot differentiate between dopa and alpha methyl dopa. It thinks that this is our substrate. So, let us convert this into its product. So, alpha methyl dopa is converted into alpha methyl dopamine, and alpha methyl dopamine enters into the vesicle. It enters into the vesicle, and in the vesicle, within the vesicle, alpha methyl dopamine is converted into alpha methyl norepinephrine by beta hydroxylase enzyme. Similarly, beta hydroxylase enzyme converts the alpha methyl dopamine into alpha methyl norepinephrine. It cannot differentiate between dopamine and alpha methyl dopamine. So, it produces alpha methyl norepinephrine. Alpha methyl norepinephrine is produced in huge amounts, and when the action potential comes along this nerve terminal, then release of alpha methyl norepinephrine occurs, and alpha methyl norepinephrine cannot stimulate alpha adrenergic receptors or beta adrenergic receptors. So, there is diminished action of norepinephrine, because there is very less norepinephrine left in the vesicles, and there is more false neurotransmitter, that is alpha methyl norepinephrine. So, there is less action of norepinephrine, there is reduction in blood pressure. Okay. So, this is the proposed mechanism of alpha methyl dopa. Now, what are their therapeutic use? So, their use is limited to pregnancy, like gestational hypertension and preeclampsia. Preeclampsia is a condition in pregnancy which leads to some complications in the later stage of pregnancy. So, what are their adverse effects? Like sedation, nightmare, depression, and positive Coombs test with hemolytic anemia. These adverse effects can occur after taking alpha methyl dopa. Now, another drug which is called clonidine, and clonidine is a direct alpha 2 receptor agonist. It stimulates the alpha 2 receptor directly. So, what does it cause? It causes decrease in the release of norepinephrine. So, there is decreased norepinephrine action. So, stimulation of alpha 2 receptor decreases the norepinephrine release, because it gives the negative feedback. So, through its action, it causes decrease in norepinephrine release, and there is decreased norepinephrine action. So, where we can use this drug? We can use this drug in ADHD, in drug withdrawal, in alcohol and opioid, but this drug is not commonly used for these purposes. There are better drugs available nowadays. And in case of resistant hypertension, where you cannot control hypertension by giving other drugs, then you can use these drugs as a last resort. What are their adverse effects? You can see rebound hypertension. If you stop suddenly this drug, that can cause rebound hypertension and other adverse effects like sedation and dry mouth. Now, come to the last part of this lecture, specific use of epinephrine. This question is very common in our exams, because many of the teachers are interested in the specific use of epinephrine. They might ask you, it is their very favorite question. So, number one is anaphylactic shock. In anaphylactic shock, we give epinephrine because this is the drug of choice. Okay. So, what does it cause? It promptly reverses hypotension, laryngeal edema, and bronchospasm. So, it protects our vascular system. Okay. Then it improves laryngeal edema and it improves bronchospasm. So, it causes bronchodilation. Now, why this drug is given intramuscularly here? Because if you give intravenously, then the shock will be, the progression will be grave, because it will act on the heart vigorously and it will cause vasoconstriction. There will be renal damage, etc. So we give this drug intramuscularly so that it acts not very slowly and not very fast. Okay. Then you can use this drug in case of cardiac arrest as a chemical conversion. Okay, as a method of chemical conversion, you can use this drug in cardiac arrest, and it is given along with CPR, okay, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, to stimulate the heart. Okay. And then you can give this drug with local anesthetics. Epinephrine produces vasoconstriction, so it reduces the absorption of local anesthetics. Okay, and as the vasoconstriction occurs, there is reduction of absorption of local anesthetic, which causes prolongation of action of the local anesthetic. Okay, and it also decreases the systemic adverse effect of this drug, this local anesthetic. Okay. Now let's look at the adverse effects. There may be restlessness, tremor, headache, anxiety, and palpitations if you give this drug in low dose, but if you give in high dose, there may be marked rise in blood pressure, which may lead to cerebral hemorrhage, ventricular tachycardia, ventricular fibrillation, angina, and myocardial infarction. Now, what are the contraindications? You cannot give this drug to hypertensive patients, hyperthyroid patients, and anginal patients. Okay, and you cannot give this drug in patients having receiving beta blockers, because there will be marked rise of blood pressure due to unopposed alpha action. As I have talked earlier, that it has both beta 2 actions and alpha 1 actions. So if there is beta blockers, if the patient is using beta blockers, then its beta action is opposed. Okay, its beta action is blocked, so it cannot act on the beta blocker beta receptors to cause vasodilation. What remains? Only alpha action. So alpha action is vasoconstriction. So through vasoconstriction there will be rise in blood pressure. So the patients in receiving beta blockers, there will be marked rise of blood pressure. So we do not give this drug in a patient who is receiving beta blockers. Hope you have enjoyed this class. Thank you very much for joining.